If you're in business or marketing, you probably check your analytics, your bank account, and growth dashboards often. But what happens when those numbers start managing you instead of you managing them? Today, we're going back to one of the most sobering leadership mistakes in the Bible, King David's census, and we'll connect it to real-world examples from modern business and ministry leaders who have wrestled with the same issue. Hey, lady bosses, are you working even after putting the kids to bed but still not getting results?
Are you tired of spending money on ads that aren't getting engagement?
Do you feel burdened that you aren't fulfilling your purpose in life because you are so consumed with work?
I'm your host, Brooke Boltz. I'm an attorney and founder of Boltz Legal. I started my business and in 1 year was bringing in 7 figures and am now bringing in multi-7 figures.
And I'm your co-host, Rachel Boltz, owner of Boltz Media. I've helped many businesses build their online presence and increase their revenue through digital marketing.
Want to hear how we did it?
We are here to help you achieve your goals personally, professionally, and spiritually.
So kick off your high heels, sit back, and let's ignite that passion.
We're Miss Biz, where we're putting the Miss in biz.
Let's get biz done.
In 2 Samuel, David orders a census to count Israel's fighting or army men. No big deal, right? This had happened before with no problems. However, God was very displeased that David had ordered the census, so much so that he gave him a choice between 3 punishments. David chose the shortest punishment, which was 3 days of a plague, but that plague ended up killing 70,000 people.
That's crazy.
So David repents and God ends the plague after a sacrifice, but this got me thinking so hard, because a census, what's the problem? And Israel had done censuses before, so the act itself was not the problem, but what made it wrong was the heart behind it. So the Bible doesn't say specifically why David ordered the census, but we can infer a couple of possible motivations. One is that he just was prideful about how big his army had grown, and that he wanted to boast about the size of his army. The reason this could be the motivation is because there was no battle that transpired after this census.
Right.
So the other option would be that he was counting how many warriors he had in case he needed to go into battle to know if he would be strong enough to win that battle. If that was his motivation, God was still displeased, because from God's perspective, it doesn't matter the size of your army. If God is with you, then you will prevail. So either motivation, God was displeased with. And so I am looking at this thinking, well, as business owners, we're always counting our numbers. We're always counting our army men. We're always looking at these metrics. And so I'm asking myself, is that something I shouldn't be doing? Is that something that is displeasing to God, that I am looking at all these numbers all the time? And what I came to is that the counting is not the problem, but again, it's the heart behind the counting. So what can we learn about this story to apply towards our businesses?
So what we can learn is that we count these different aspects of our businesses, but we need to make sure that we are not putting our identity or our control into those numbers. So some of those numbers may be revenue, sales, followers, and conversions. And I mean, those are all essential aspects that you need to be keeping track of. But you cannot put all your eggs in those baskets or become so obsessed with it that you lose sight of trusting God and knowing that He's in control. Metrics can actually become modern day idols when they define our worth or drive our decisions apart from prayer and obedience.
So some modern day case studies or modern day examples of this, one would be Mark Driscoll and Mars Hill Church. So if you're not familiar with Mars Hill, it was a mega church. It was an empire. It was a fast growing, massive reach, global podcast audience. They had a physical church, but also had an online presence. And they were so obsessed with their reach and their numbers that it became a mask for some deeper dysfunction. And the church collapsed in 2014 after a scandal and a leadership implosion. If you want to know more about Mars Hill, there's a podcast by Christianity Today called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. But it is a great example how being obsessed with numbers and being obsessed with success and growth had become an idol. It had become more important than what the original mission was, which was to reach people for the kingdom. And so they failed and imploded because their focus shifted away from God's leading, and instead of building God's kingdom, started focusing on building their own.
That's so sad too. And I think, a lot of times it starts out the best of intentions. I highly doubt when they started that church that that's where they saw themselves going. But it just goes to show you that if you're not careful and keeping Christ at the center of every single aspect, we can all easily go astray.
Well, and it's really easy to start believing that this success is because of you.
Right.
It's really easy when money is rolling in and people are showing up and you're having all these fans and these followers to get a big head and to think, this is all about me. I built this. And the moment that happens, which is, again, it's very easy to do, is the moment we step out from under God's grace and we end up in the position that David was, wanting to count his men so that he could show how great his army was.
You know we're all about that case, no trouble. All about that case, no trouble. All about that case, no trouble. All about that case.
At Bolts Legal, we are all about your case. Text or call to schedule a free consultation for all your legal needs. boltslegal.com.
So the second example we have is Tommy Breedlove. Tommy was a senior financial consultant living in the high performance lifestyle, corner office, big checks, and lots of prestige. The crash occurred though where he burnt out, was emotionally broken, and lost everything that mattered to him. He realized that he was chasing success metrics to fill an identity void. So he eventually, after recognizing this, he redirected himself, and now he is a leadership coach who helps others pursue significance over success. So the biggest lesson that he learned was that he had built an image the world praised, but it almost killed him. And the numbers didn't matter when he was empty inside.
Yeah. And we've heard this, Crystal Parker, who was on our an episode recently, she talked about this same type of thing where her identity was wrapped up in her success in the oil and gas industry. And she sacrificed all of that to start a ministry, the U.S. Christian Chamber of Commerce, which is a nonprofit. But yet, how empty she was when she was in, or how empty she felt when she was in that high earning capacity versus the rewarding feeling that she has now that her life has more purpose. So if you want to read more about Tommy Breedlove, he has a book called Legendary: Discover the Leader Within. And then the third example of someone who fell victim to the metrics obsession is a social influencer, a Christian one, Hosanna Wong. She was a Christian poet, artist, and evangelist, but as her audience grew, so did her temptation to measure everything and to base her value on the likes, shares, and applause. And I think the social media world that we live in makes this even more difficult to withstand. Because if anyone, you look and see, actually, I met a pastor the other day, and he was mentioning that he had a YouTube following. And so when I left that meeting, I looked him up. He had 900,000 followers on Facebook. And I was like, holy cow. I just thought I was talking to a normal guy. But that prestige that we give to people when they have that kind of a following, it was immediate. When I saw how many followers, I'm like, wow, I had no idea that's who I was talking to.
Right.
And because we put so much value on those people who have that type of an audience, it becomes so easy to idolize that and to yearn for that and to make that your highest priority in life. But Hosanna realized that she was performing for validation instead of her ministry for God. So she took a break and she recalibrated her ministry and recommitted to serving from a place of humility, not performance. And she came back and revived her ministry from a good place in her heart as opposed to chasing those metrics. So the lesson we can learn from Hosanna is that the world may count views, but God counts obedience. And if you want to know more about Hosanna's story, her book you can find is called How Not to Save the World.
Good for her. You know, that must have been incredibly difficult to kind of get yourself out of that, especially if that's what you do for work and you want to make sure that your posts and your reels and everything are performing well. I mean, for her to just be able to recognize that and pivot and now be able to use that to help others is just very, very impressive.
Yeah, she recognized it and self-corrected, and not everyone does.
Right. So there's a fine line between wisdom and worship. So wise use of metrics versus obsessive use of metrics. There's a difference between stewarding with insight versus obsessing for control. There's also a difference between tracking for growth for mission versus needing numbers for self-worth. So make sure that as we're going through these couple of things that you really write down where you feel you are in your heart and if you are in fact measuring to improve impact or you're measuring to validate identity. And be really, really honest with yourself because you may have to make some pivots and changes. When it comes to social media, sometimes having a scheduling tool can be extremely helpful, but with so many different options, it's difficult to determine which one is best for your needs as well as your budget. That's why we created the Social Media Planner Comparison Chart.
Then you can look at all the different options and choose the one that's best for you. For your free copy, visit missbiz.com/contact and simply type into the subject line Social Media Comparison Chart.
Right. So I think if you really sit down and are honest with yourself, you know if you are in a healthy relationship with your numbers or not. Are they the first thing you think of when you wake up in the morning? How many followers did I get last night? How many hearts did I get? How many likes did I get? You know, that might be a sign that that you are overvaluing those metrics. Some of the questions you can ask yourself to do a heart check is, am I using numbers to serve the kingdom or to build my kingdom? Would I still do this if the numbers stayed small? And have I prayed about this or just tracked it? And as you know, in all honesty, as we're talking through this podcast, I'm feeling some conviction myself that I probably do have more emphasis on numbers than I should. And so, I'm asking myself these questions and realizing, I probably do care too much about these numbers, and I need to surrender them and put them back where they belong to be, which is just a tool of wisdom, not something that I am idolizing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a couple boundaries that you can put into place to help protect you in that regard, where you make a rule or a plan to only check your numbers once a week, or just having some sort of safety net to kind of help you refocus, and maybe even like a ritual that you do between you and God after you check your numbers, where you're communicating with Him and giving Him the honor and glory.
Yeah, and that obsessive characteristic of social media in general, I think, is why some people just stay away from it entirely. Mm-hmm. They're so afraid of being sucked in. And so we're like, no, we can do it in a healthy way, whatever. But it reminds me, have you seen on TikTok, it might be on other platforms too, there is a video that is trending right now of a young girl who I think was 14, who had like 12 minutes that she died, and she talks about what happened during those 12 minutes.
Oh, wow, no.
It's shown up on my feed a few times, so you can check it out if you haven't seen it already. But basically, she says that during those 12 minutes, she had an out-of-body experience where she could see her body being pulled from the wreckage. It was a car accident. She died for 12 minutes. But basically, she saw Jesus, and she explained that he looked very different than what she's seen traditionally in children's books and movies. But she saw Jesus, and he took her to this like room full of people on their tablets and phones and iPads and computers, and he said, look down, this is what I see every day, are people who are just so entrenched in their electronics that I can't get their attention. And so then she says, we went to a few of them directly, and he said, this person, I've been trying to speak to this, that, or the other thing, but they're so obsessed with their social media following. And then the next person, this person's so obsessed with their video games, or this person's, whatever. It was just different examples of different people that he was trying to get their attention, but they were all consumed with their electronics. And so just as we're going through this, it reminds me of that, because I can see how us being so distracted with all of the things we have accessible to us today is painful to God who wants our attention.
Absolutely. I mean, the phone alone will keep you busy and misguided and misdirected from really being able to hear God and have that alone time with Him. So some practices to help you stay grounded are to start business reviews or staff meetings with prayer, track both metrics and mission moments, which includes stories of impact. I love that one. To take a digital Sabbath, which means that you step away from dashboards to reset your identity. You can also set obedience-based goals. So for example, the number of people you served, not just in revenue. And build a heart team, people who check your motives, not just your performance.
Yeah. So, in conclusion, David repented and God restored. So there is grace for us. There is forgiveness for us. If you're feeling like we are, that we have put these numbers in an unhealthy place in our lives and businesses, then every day is a new day. This is an opportunity to start fresh and surrender those metrics to God. You don't have to stop measuring, but you have to stop worrying. You have to stop obsessing, and you have to stop placing your identity in those numbers. So faithful leadership counts the right things for the right reasons. When the numbers go up or down, your identity stays rooted because you're building with God, not apart from Him.
So this week, take 30 minutes and ask, what's one thing I've been idolizing, and how can I surrender that to God?
We appreciate you and are honored to be on this journey with you. We can't wait to help you, to encourage you, and show you how to grow personally, professionally, and spiritually.
If you found Miss Biz helpful, please leave a review and share with others.
You can follow us on social media at Miss Biz Podcast.
For legal questions or services, please visit boltslegal.com.
And for digital marketing needs, please visit boltsmedia.com. Let's get biz done.